Hi, Spooky Dookies, and welcome to the very first episode of PA Paranormal. This is our maiden voyage, and for that, I apologize. I really don't know what I'm doing. It's guaranteed to be a little bit of a rocky road. Um, Hopefully we don't hit an iceberg. Maybe we can just bear with me and we will learn together. So I thank you for that. Um, First episode, as promised, is on Pennhurst State School. And as you can see, I am wearing my Pennhurst t-shirt that I got at the lovely gift shop. Really excited. I really like this t-shirt. Um, so what I want to do is I want to break this episode down into three parts. And before I get into that, when I went to Pennhurst 2 weeks ago, it was also the paranormal convention, Paracon 2026. um, which is apparently the largest paranormal convention on the East Coast. I did learn something about myself. I don't think I'm a convention person. That being said, I was planning on doing a whole separate episode about Paracon, but to be completely honest, I don't have that much to say about it. So that we will cover the convention towards the end of the episode. But to start out, before I went to Paracon, I did do some research on the internet, as one does. And I wrote some stuff down here that I am going to read. Then we're going to pause the video and I am going to re-look at what I saw and the footage I took with my own eyes. Come back, explain about that. And then thirdly, we will go into the convention. So, I think a big misconception about Pennhurst is that it was an insane asylum. In fact, it was not an insane asylum. It was actually a school for people with disabilities and epilepsy. So please keep that in mind. Also, small trigger warning. This did happen back in the day, in the 20s, 30s, 40s. So we will be using some very outdated terms regarding people with disabilities. These words are not coming out of my mouth. These are quotes that I've gotten from my research. So if that offends anyone, feel free to skip this episode. But again, this was back in the day. These terms were socially and medically acceptable at the time. So, without further ado, I am going to get into my research portion. And this portion is before I set eyes at all on Pennhurst. I knew little to nothing about it. So this is basically what the internet had to say about it. And then I went there and saw it for my own eyes and formed my own opinion. So here we go. It says, at the turn of the 20th century, on a quiet stretch of land in Spring City, Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth set out to build what is believed would be a model of progress. In 1903, lawmakers authorized the creation of the Eastern State Institution for the feeble-minded and epileptic, envisioning a place where society's most vulnerable citizens could be cared for, studied, and protected. A commission was formed to count and categorize those deemed feeble-minded or epileptic and to choose a site where they could be gathered together away from public view. When Pennhurst State School and Hospital officially opened its doors in 1908, it was promoted as humane and forward-thinking. Brick buildings arose along the Schuylkill River, and the institution promised structure, treatment, and order. But the ideals that shaped Pennhurst were deeply rooted in fear and pseudoscience. By 1913, a newly appointed commission for the care of the feeble-minded declared that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities were unfit for citizenship and a danger to public peace. The solution, the commission insisted, was lifelong custodial care, not to heal, but to contain. Behind this reasoning lay the influence of the eugenics movement. Remember that word eugenics, we will come back to that later. The same report sent to the legislature warned that allowing those confined within Pennhurst to mingle with the general population would contaminate society. In one chilling passage from a biennial report, Pennhurst's chief physician quoted eugenicist Henry H. Goddard, who claimed that every feeble-minded person is a potential criminal, portraying residents not as patients, but as threats. As decades passed, Pennhurst filled far beyond its capacity. Thousands of children and adults were sent there, many for reasons that had little to do with disability, reasons such as poverty, behavioral differences, or simply being unwanted. Overcrowding became severe, staffing was minimal, and care deteriorated. Residents were restrained, isolated, and subject to harsh and experimental treatments. Neglect was woven into daily life. The institution's walls absorbed years of suffering, frustration, and silence, and it is from this long accumulation of pain that legends later arose, claiming that the spirits of those who lived and died there never truly left. The veil finally began to lift in the 1970s. On May 30th, 1974, a lawsuit was filed on behalf of Pennhurst residents by Philadelphia attorney David Furliger. The case drew national attention and was eventually joined by the United States government and the Pennsylvania Association for R-Word Citizens. After years of testimony and evidence, U.S. District Judge Raymond J. Broderick ruled in 1977 that the conditions at Pennhurst violated the constitutional rights of its patients. The ruling marked the beginning of the end. When the court overtook effect on March 17, 1978, 1,156 people were still living behind Pennhurst gates. Their journey out was slow and careful, unfolding over nearly a decade. One by one, residents were moved into small community homes, known as community living arrangements, designed to house 3 or fewer people and provide round-the-clock support when needed. Families were consulted, treatment plans were discussed, and for the first time, many former residents experienced life beyond institutional walls. In 1987, Pennhurst State School and Hospital closed for good. What remains today are empty buildings and lingering echoes of a system built on fear rather than compassion. For some, Pennhurst is remembered as a haunted place. For others, it stands as a stark reminder of how easily progress can be distorted and how long it can take for justice to finally arrive. So, that's what I've got so far. That's what the internet has to say. Um, I will say that it was very interesting for me to go there, as Pennhurst is considered one of the most haunted places in Pennsylvania, if not in the United States. I did a little bit of investigating myself. I am by no means a paranormal investigator, but I do have a couple little toys, so we did a little stuff, and I saw a lot of people doing investigating. But I'm gonna go and review my research, see what I saw. I did take a wonderful history tour guide Chris. He was absolutely amazing. I got tons of information from that. Um, and just kind of being at the convention, you had free reign to roam anywhere you wanted in any of the buildings. We actually got to go underneath to the tunnels. That was interesting. So again, I'm gonna go review my videos and pictures, and I will be back shortly. Okay, thanks. I'm back. So now I am actually going to show some clips from the history tour I took. Our tour guide, Chris, he explained sort of how Pennhurst began with good intentions, although very backward thinking, but again, medically accepted for the time, and how it went into its eventual downfall. A few points I want you to pay attention to in these videos. When we get to the hospital portion of it, I did ask Chris about a dentist that I read about that would pull out patients' teeth, seemingly for no reason. And he answered that question brilliantly for me. Then the next part, when we go to the infirmary, he does talk about the eugenics movement. Please pay attention to that. That is important as well. Okay, and then I will be back with my personal little tour I did myself on my own. Okay.
The history at Pennhurst. It is a very rich history, full of a lot of misconceptions. There are a lot of horror stories associated with this place, and some of those horror stories there is some truth to. However, not everything is as it's been told. So, one of my biggest jobs that I didn't realize was going to be as time consuming is finding the truth to all those urban legends. Mm-hmm. And as they say, all urban legends are usually built from some seed of truth. So, everybody stare! In November of 1908, and that was patient number one, not just the first patient, but also number one. They used to numerate the patients here. As far as administration is concerned, as far as the state is concerned, everybody was a number. However, the people who actually worked here, they didn't care about the number as much as they did the names. They usually referred to the patients by their last name. And so whenever I talk to people who have worked here, they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember Hot, you know what I mean, or yeah, Romeo, I remember Romeo, and so they always talked about them by their last names. Um, in general, though, they did refer to the patients here as kids or children. And so that's a big thing that you usually get is when you talk to anybody about Pennhurst, you always hear about the children or the kids. Uh, Beyond that, though, Let's see, this place opened up in 1908. It started with a capacity of 500 people. That capacity was met within months. And so they had to break ground and expand even more after that. This place expands, doubles in size within 10 years, and it keeps on expanding until it reaches a maximum capacity of about 3,500 people in the mid 1950s. That doesn't even account for the annex locations across the eastern Pennsylvania region, which accounts for another 1,000. So this place at one point had a roster of about 4,500 people just at one time period. Throughout the entire tenure of this operation, this place had a unique patient count of over 10,000 people, most of whom are going to spend the rest of their lives here. So it's a pretty rough situation. Consider the campus that you've been able to walk so far. That's just about one half of the space that was available at the time. So imagine 3,500 people is kind of, honestly, the numbers that we have today is kind of like that, right? So you can imagine trying to think, oh, there's but hi, celebrity. But we have quite a bit of misgivings happening at this time. Towards the mid 1960s, we started hearing about a lot of neglect, a lot of abuse, and we're going to talk exactly why we get there. But for a while, this place was actually trying to be something different. And it's very odd how it all kind of plays together. I'm going to be giving a lot of good, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of the good stuff that happened. But don't worry, I'm not glossing over the bad. All right, I'm going to get to the bad stuff as well because there's a reason why I went from good to bad. But before I continue, does anybody have any questions or concerns moving forward?
Were the patients over?
So at one point, towards the early days, 1910 through 1930, you're going to have a mixed bag of all age groups, including infants to 80 years old. At about the mid 19, a little bit after I'd say the early 1960s, that's when they phased out all of the under 18s and moved them to orphanages or specialty schools. And so for a good chunk of time after that, it was only 18 plus. Okay. Good question though, especially when everybody only ever refers to them as children. It's hard to
Sure.
right? And another thing that's really kind of weird is the fact that a lot of the kids who were immobile, they were in specialty beds that looked like cribs, and so even the staff would refer to them as cribs as well. So you got kids in cribs, and they're above 18, so it's weird. You'll also note, by the way, that I do here a couple educators. Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about medicine and also education. So at any point, if I talk out of hand or something like that, just go ahead and slap me. But when it comes to medical stuff with the patients here, um, there isn't a lot, especially in the beginning. There's not a lot of medicine per se, but there's physical and occupational therapy in the 20s and 30s for people with disabilities. I got to tell you, the way we actually came about having institutions was antithetical to the idea that like we would be offering therapies for people with disabilities. Because I don't know if you know this, but the reason why institutions came about was because we found no reason to have people with disabilities out in society. We wanted to tuck them away. A lot of people have asked when I started these tours, like, why? Like, where the hell did we go wrong to have institutions? It's a little odd. It's distressing because if you were to research this, you'd actually see handwritten notes, you'd see paperwork and laws signed by governors of the respective states and such. But there was a moment in time after the Civil War where things were not okay, right? The Civil War, and I don't know if you know enough about the Civil War or the events happening after the Civil War, but after that war, people got back home and were just different. People were broken, lands had been salted or completely destroyed. Um, if people were coming back with fewer limbs than they had left with, families were torn apart. It was a rough time, and of course, the economy took a huge hit because anytime you participate in war, that's billions of dollars going to destruction, right? So the North and South had suffered hard a lot of people were just completely decimated as far as their personal economies, notwithstanding the actual economy of the country itself. So the only people who were able to weather the storm were those privileged enough or rich enough to be able to just, afford that economic downturn. Well, the rich and powerful at this time decided we got to coalesce. We got to make sure that all of our money is together and we can all invest it properly into these beacons of power. And we're going to go ahead and set shop in the cities. We're going to set shop in New York, in Chicago, in San Francisco, and make sure that all the influence coalesces into a single spot on the map. That way we can all have our banks here, we can all put our money here, and we can influence exactly what happens inside these city walls. Um, Now, where there's money, there's also people coming in who want money, right? And so we have this idea of like street urchins or people trying to do like street games, trying to make a buck here and there. But that kind of creates a seedy environment for these powerful people to kind of be like, I don't want to deal with this. Right? No, 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 no. If I'm going to have these beautiful brownstones, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this street is perfect, pristine, not even horse poop on the sidewalks. All right, this place is going to be looking good. And so the cities come up with an ordinance to clean up the streets of all these vagrants coming in. And we have these vagrancy laws that show up that pretty much state that if you are visibly impoverished, if you look poor, you are no longer allowed in these city limits. Now, what does that mean? That means if you decide to go to Wawa in your sweats, it's no go. If you're not dressed to the nines, you don't look the part. If you're having a bad hair day, like I probably am, I haven't looked at a mirror yet. No, you're not allowed in this society. You have to look the part. So if you break the vagrancy laws, we're just going to go ahead and remove you. The cops become the judge, jury, and executioner of this law, and away these vagrants go. They get thrown in jail, and if it's just a bad day and they do have money, but they just didn't look the part, they get a warning and sent back on the streets. However, if you were proven to be poor, we can't just let you back out because you just go ahead and be poor some more. We can't handle that. So we're going to go ahead and send you to a state-run facility known as an almshouse or a poorhouse. Workhouse, some people may have called, because the state is going to pay for your tenancy, but you're not just going to stay there free. No, 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 no. We're going to make sure that you make that money back. And so you're going to go there and you're going to work for us and pay for your stay. Because if anything, if I'm going to invest in a workhouse, what's the return on my investment? Right? That's how we run things, especially in the U.S. economy back then. If I'm going to invest, I need a return on investment, and so that's how the workhouse works. However, there are a lot of people that have, as we talked, intellectual or physical disabilities, and they cannot work. They cannot be as productive as we want them to be. So what do we do with them? They're just obviously taking space in the workhouse, not doing work. So we got to figure something else out. For now, we're going to go ahead and just kind of put them in a facility where they get to stay until we figure something out with them. This is where Pennhurst comes in. Places like Pennhurst open up just to house people with intellectual disabilities, physical deformities, and just are unproductive in general. But here's the deal. We open this place up. It's state run. It's a place where people who are not productive get to live on our dime. There's my investment. Where's my return? Right? The institutions are pretty much a black hole in our budget. We cannot accept that as a society. But for now, it's better that they are off the streets. So the return on investment as of right now is the fact that our streets are clean. We're going to have to figure something else out later. And that's kind of where we stand at one point. Just welcome to the hospital. What's left of it? You're actually standing in the administrative offices of the hospital right now. You guys are actually standing in the bathroom. Don't look at them. But yeah, here's the hospital. At one point, when it came to institutionalization, there was not a lot of thought put into like how to care for the people here long term. It was just okay. Let's put them in here and figure it out as we go. So if anybody did have emergent care or needed to be, if they had, let's just keep it at emergent care, they would be taken by ambulance to local hospitals in the region. But this place got so big, as I mentioned before, that became quite a demand. So there was need to have people cared for here. On top of that, every time you brought somebody out, you kind of skeezed people out. They didn't really like looking at these uh, rejects of society outside of or inside our walls, and so it became very apparent that we needed to just kind of keep everybody in house. So there was a hospital built here. By 1921, this building was in operation. On top of that, this place also featured a power plant. The power plant would also then heat up the water and steam for heat and all that. Um, there was even a water reservoir here, water treatment facility. This place had it all. But the hospital actually serves not just obviously medical purposes. It had its ward, it had surgery, it had dentistry, pharmacy, everything could be handled in house. Um, Self sustainability was very important for institutions, especially as big as Pennhurst. Um, that's my hospital bit. You guys have any questions about the hospital? Yeah.
Yes. I heard about the dentist that would pull out people's teeth. Is
Yeah.
this where that happened?
We'll actually be able to see the dentist chair.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Or what should be the dentist chair.
Okay.
If you know, you know. But so the story about the dentist is rooted in some truth. The truth is that back in the day, especially pre 1960s, we have a couple conditions that we just don't know a lot about, right? We know how to control them, but not necessarily what they're about. And there is this condition that you may or may not know called pica, which is a compulsion to use your teeth or your jaw muscles to chew or to eat. And TLC made a cute show about it at one point, where they had people like eating deodorant sticks or chewing on just inanimate objects. I don't remember what it was called, but regardless, it is a real condition. And unfortunately, if the compulsion is strong enough, you could end up chewing on just about anything, whether it be rocks in the ground, whether it be a person next to you, or your own self. Back in the day, when the compulsion was strong enough, the only thing that could control that person would be pretty much just restraints. That's it. Um, and if they could get out of their restraints, then there's really nothing you can do. And so, what do you do, right? Well, this place was the cream of the crop. This place was the trendsetter when it came to medical interventions, especially for disabilities. And so what went here went everywhere. And it was medically accepted to remove the thing that was hurting yourself or others, which meant the teeth. So there are many documented cases of patients who are still alive today who had their teeth removed because of their condition. The compulsion was just too strong. Now, granted, I doubt that there was some crazed dentist with a pair of rusty pliers going, "Bring me my next victim."
Oh, there definitely was.
I don't have a firsthand account to tell me otherwise, but I highly doubt that would be the case. But it was medically accepted, and it was done here. It was done everywhere. Um, what else was I going to say? Towards the 1960s, however, we have this invention of a brand new drug that really there was no standard of care for people with disabilities, meaning the state never heard your case on a personal level. The state would just trust that the institution would handle it. Now, for Pennhurst, the people here had every intention to give the people here some quality of life, some value to their lives. And so the standard of care, especially in the beginning, was intended to be very good. And for the most part, it was based on the medical limitations of the time. Yes, we did pull teeth. Yes, there were human restraints. but because that was the advanced medicine at the time, right? So it's like a double-edged sword. Like, yes, it was great, but also just a figment of the time. There was at one point we were bloodletting and doing all sorts of weird stuff. So. And when we found out that there were a lot of poor people who had similarities or comorbidities with things like disabilities and deformities and stuff, then we got to thinking, if enough people if enough poor people or unproductive people are disabled, we got to do something about that. What's another thing that all these disabled people have in common? Ooh, some of those disabilities are hereditary. So if we just go ahead and say that every disability is hereditary, we can weed them out. Eventually we'll die on. So when we start sending people here, we start moving men on one side, women on the other side, hoping that they never mingle, so that after a couple generations, no more disability. This opens up the doors to one of the darkest parts of American history, known as the American eugenics movement. The practice of eugenics is when you're actually trying to manipulate the gene pool to benefit yourself by removing undesirable genes and promoting desirable genes. Americans actually led the way on this. We loved the idea of eugenics. We loved it so much that we actually started getting other countries to join us. Hey, you might want to hear about what we're doing over here. We got some cool ideas. You want to make your country amazing? Do what we're doing. We'll send you the plans. Shoot, here's the floor plans to all my buildings. We sent our campus to a bunch of different countries. We actually invited scientists over from different countries and said, come see what we're doing. Took it back. A couple countries actually took the bait. One person in particular hears about what we're doing here. He writes about us in a little diary. He got in trouble, spent some time in jail, wrote a diary. And he says, the Americans are doing something interesting. I think I can do it faster. They want them to die out. I'm going to make them go away overnight. And so he actually gets some money and some influence, starts up a project called T4. If you actually Google Project T4 or Action T4, you'll hear about everything I'm talking about, where he takes the lowest grade, quote, imbeciles from the 7 hospitals in his country, brings them down into the basement, and gasses them and cremates them in mass. Over the course of the entirety of Project T4, we lose 300,000 disabled souls. He goes to the country and says, what do you think about that? They said, wow, that was amazing. You single-handedly removed an entire burdensome population from our country. What else you got? Because you like that home beer. He eventually moves his way up the ranks, forces his way into the chancellorship of Germany. You guys know what I'm talking about. Adolf Hitler. He actually got the idea from us. When he embarked on Project T4, we wrote to him after his first real night and said, we see what you're doing, and we wish you the best of luck on your future endeavors. We egged him on. I got no way to segue out of that one, so I'm just going to walk back. And it's also cooler. The good stuff. I mentioned all the good stuff, right? The fact that we have education, we have therapies, we got visitation that's offered here. These kids are able to receive a lot of quality of life stuff here. We're doing everything we can to make sure that they're having a good time here. So where does everything go wrong? Where's all the stories of abuse coming from, right? Well, it comes down to a single moment in time towards the early 1960s, where the taxpayer, actually learns about what's happening here. Because at one point, all the taxpayer wanted was to just get rid of these people, right? Here's some money, go ahead and build this place up. Here's some more money, go ahead and expand it. Take all the money you need to get them away from my sight, out of mind. And as I mentioned, this was a red spot on our budget, and we had no return on investment for them. But we tolerated it because at least they were away from our sight. However, once people started realizing what exactly was happening here, like the fact that they had a pool, like I don't even have a pool. Why am I paying for their pool, right? They have like good food, they have all these amenities and stuff, that's not what I paid for. I could have not been bothered if they were exterminated. But here you are giving them quality of life. That's not what we're here for. So you know what? We're going to take our money back. We're going to actually dry up that budget, and you're just going to have to figure it out. And so that's exactly what happened. This institution, among others, were told to do more with less. And it was just unsustainable. What we had going on was people, this institution and others like it, were having to cut on staffing, or had to cut down on quality of care, almost to the point where there was no care, lack of care. They cut down on staffing so much that when I talk about ratios with my medical professionals, when I talk ratios, what that means is we have a patient to staff ratio. Ideally, every patient should, or every staff member should be working with one patient, right? And ideally, maybe 2 patients per one staff. That way, that staff person is going to know everything about that patient. They're going to know their middle name, they're going to know their favorite ice cream, they're going to know how they best receive their medication and all that kind of stuff. As you increase that ratio, the quality of care diminishes rapidly. At 3 to 1, that's pretty good, I'll accept it, right? At 5 to 1, all right, that means I have 5 patients I got to take care of. It's a busy day, but I'll get it done. 7 patients to 1 nurse, oh man, it's going to be a rough day. I might need a hard drink at the end of the day. But I'll make it work, I guess. Hopefully I don't make any mistakes. 10 patients to 1 nurse. If I have a union, I'm going to be calling them. At the height of the COVID pandemic, the senior center up the hill over here, they were seeing ratios of 30 to 1. Inhuman. The stories that were erupting from that place after COVID hit was insane. I'm talking people were dying and were not being discovered for days later. There were cadavers rotting in the hallway. It was a humanitarian crisis at 30 patients to 1. You want to know what Pennhurst was at? Easy, 100 to 1. At that point, there is nothing you can do that is of any substance. You are literally locking yourself up in the nurse's office, waiting for the patients to tire themselves out, and you get to clean up the aftermath later. You're triaging horrible things like, ooh, do I help the open leg wound or the open head wound, right? You're not getting anything done. At that point, staff members are losing their humanity. They're starting to make very bad decisions. They're turning on each other. It's an awful situation. It's a madhouse, quite literally. Nothing really happens for a while, even after an expose comes in. A journalist comes in and films supper for little children. Blows the lid off this place. People know about it, but nothing happens. Nothing really happens until a mother steps in. Nobody gets anything done with a mom. She comes in and she actually hears about what's happening, sees that her daughter had been mistreated, and goes to the state court, district court of Philadelphia, actually, and says, do something. They say, it's how we do things, I'm sorry. She takes all this information and goes to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. They hear her. They send fact-finding missions out, and they see exactly what's been going on here. But the pièce de résistance that actually got the judge to do something was the fact that, as I mentioned before, all the under 18s got shipped out at one point, right? This was all over 18s. In the 1960s and 70s, everybody here was over 18, and there were no more wards of the state. They were autonomous human beings at that point. Maybe they had family to help with decisions, but they were over 18 and thus should have been given their human rights. They were unaware that they could leave this place, that they could have a life outside of Pennhurst. So they were subjected to the horrors and the neglect without the need of having been in here in the first place. So the judge sees this as, no way, I can't throw enough money at this place. I have to shut this down. This is a civil rights issue. And so that's exactly what he does in 1977. Judge Raymond J. Broderick of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court rules that this place must close down and we must redo the foundations for which we care for disability. And so Pennhurst, well, actually, places like Pennhurst and psychiatric places, especially, they get the word that we're deinstitutionalizing. They say, "All right," and they leave. That's it. They just open their doors and say, "You can't be here anymore." And so a bunch of patients from psychiatric places have been let loose, pretty much. Pennhurst, however, being the good souls that they were trying to do something. And so they held on to the patients, and for 10 years, through appeals, they tried to find personal accommodations for every single patient, and they succeeded. They closed down 10 years later, having given accommodations to every single person in these halls. But because they have their human rights, they have the ability to choose whether or not they accept those accommodations. Some do, some don't. But Pennhurst never just released them. The good people of the Pennhursts kept on trying to do good, even when they were vilified by the local populations for abusing their patients. They weren't abusing them, they were just trying to survive. But we were able to brush our shoulders off of any wrongdoing once that expose came out. Look at what they did. Look at what they did to those patients. Not what we did, not because we took back the money, right? It was because of a lack of funding that the abuses happened. That's on us. And so the final note that I have for my tours is it almost always comes down to funding. My medical staff will agree. My education staff will agree. It's all about funding. And here's the real cherry on the top. You know what happens to disabled people once they leave high school? They get their IEPs, they get their 504s. But then when they enter the workforce, there's nothing. There are programs that you can find, if you can find them, but there's nobody there to help you. And then when you do find a program that can help you, you receive benefits for being disabled, they make you jump through flaming hoops, ironically. You have to prove your disability. You have to prove your disability, you have to reapply every year. You also better not make $1,000 a month because you will not qualify for the $500 a month benefit. If you have $300 in your savings account, you do not qualify for state benefits. If you have assets, like a car, over $3,000, you do not qualify for benefits. We make it so that disabled people are forced to rely on the able population. And that's just wrong. We still punish people for being disabled. And here's the thing, going to prove that you're disabled, how does one prove their disability, especially if it's an invisible disability? There are some people that have, a missing limb that can prove their disability. Maybe their disability is overt, that you can tell just from speaking with them. But then you have somebody like me, who's recognized by the ADA as a disabled person. If you had met me in the wild, would you be able to tell? Yeah. Maybe when I'm really tired and my stutter comes out. That's about it. Chances are 1 in 3 people are disabled and have an invisible disability, which means that a majority, or not majority, but a large number of us are disabled. And if you just scan around, you'll be like, oh, who are they? You'll never know. So anyway, the point is that we are among you. The funding is not there. And if you live long enough, it is a guarantee that you yourself will become disabled. And what foundations have you laid for yourself for when you will eventually need those disability benefits? Are you prepared? I hope you are, because the state's sure not going to help. So do yourself a service and help yourself out and help your fellow man. Advocate for those who need advocating, because some can't speak for themselves. And that's why we have to speak for them. As an advocate, I hope that you will join me in speaking for them. And I'm going to leave you at that note. Just know that we are among you, and you will eventually become disabled yourself. That is a fact and a threat.
Okay. So my experience at Pennhurst, first and foremost, Pennhurst is massive. It's huge, 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 huge. Lots of buildings. Like I said, this particular trip to Pennhurst was also the Paracon convention. So included in that convention price, and I bought the VIP level ticket. So with this ticket, I was able to explore on my own all the different buildings of Pennhurst. Obviously, the ones that are still standing. A lot of Pennhurst is in ruins. The ceilings caved down, things like that. So now I would like to share personal pictures and videos that I took. The first building that I went into was called the Mayflower Hall. This one by far had the most stuff in it. Um, Most, furniture, artifacts, memorabilia, things like that. So I am going to show that stuff now. Again, it'll be a couple videos and pictures. There probably won't be sound, so if you are listening to only the audio version of this episode, you may want to skip ahead like a minute because it'll probably be just dead air. And then I will come back and talk about the next building. One thing I forgot to mention about the Mayflower photos is that you will see a picture of there is a mirror in a closet that was 100% a portal. I took my picture in it, and then you could see the words "help me." So that was pretty cool. Secondly, you will also see me taking a mirror selfie of myself in one of the bathrooms. I was alone in this room. The next picture, you will see me zoomed in to the window. I swear to God, if you look at that picture long enough, you will see a face. Check it out. Next building is the Quaker building, which had a super creepy staircase to go down. I will put a picture of that. And one of the coolest things I saw while I was there was in the basement of the Quaker Hall building. They had people with a REM pod, and the REM pod was going crazy. I am going to insert that video now. You will see what I mean. Come to your own conclusions. I personally was creeped out. Going back in the Mayflower Hall footage, I did also encounter a guy doing the Estes method, which is sort of a way of communicating with spirits using sensory deprivation. You essentially use a spirit box connected to headphones, and then you put a blindfold or something across your eyes so you could really concentrate on what's coming over the spirit box. It's very Stranger Things. So I did have him in my pictures. Unfortunately, I didn't get to talk to him, but it looked pretty cool. Um, yeah, next up is the tunnels. Thank you. If that is you, can you back away from both of them and make them go up? Oh, there's one. Can you back away from that? The tunnels. I was afraid of the tunnels. I said, I swear to God, if I see my doppelganger down in these tunnels, a la Jordan Peele's Us, I was going to poop my pants. I was freaked out. Yeah, so I got up enough nerve. I went to the tunnels. They are called the Rockwell Tunnel. And a couple fun facts about the tunnel was they were mainly used for staff, and there was a building, the Rockwell building, associated with these tunnels, but that was either torn down or is no longer there. Um, there was again a very creepy staircase to go down to the tunnels, which made it inaccessible for patients. Again, most of these people have disabilities and they're immobile, so they did not use these tunnels to transport patients. It was kind of an easy way for staff members and maintenance members to go between buildings. Um, this has been a hotspot for paranormal activity. People have reported apparitions in doorways, the sound of high heels, squeaky mop buckets, again, maintenance people, and the scent of perfume. I don't know about that, maybe nurses or something. Uh, and I went down there. It was significantly creepy, although I was glad it was not as dark as I was expecting. And one thing I want to mention about the tunnels and, in fact, all of the buildings of Pennhurst is there is no electricity in any of these buildings. And these buildings are very sort of closed off, no windows open, no airflow. So you would expect them to be really stuffy. They were freezing. And you know what cold means? Cold means ghosts. So I went down in these tunnels. I'll show you some pictures. And I got my EMF reader out. That thing was going off the charts. So I don't know what the heck was down there, but something was lurking in those tunnels. Check it out. So finally, we have come to the point where I am going to talk about Paracon, the convention. As I said earlier, I learned pretty early on that I don't think I am a convention person. On my way to Pennhurst, Pennhurst is about a half hour away from my house which is 30 minutes for you young people that don't know how to tell time. On my way there, I encountered not one, but two closed roads. So it did enter my mind. I was like, is this Pennhurst putting out a vibe, not wanting people to come? Could be. Um, so got there, parked relatively close. I do want to mention that with this ticket, you got to go early. I believe you got to go at 9. I ended up getting there around 10:30, and I got a pretty good parking space, I will say. This is day one, and you go, follow the crowd, go, and you have to go through security. It's like TSA style, metal detector. There's a sign, please empty all of your weapons out of your person. I'm like, weapons? Like, where are we? Kentucky? That I was like, okay. Um, and go through that. Then you go to the ticket line. They give you your badge and your wristband. Then you go up some steps and head on to the campus. Like I said, it is big, it's huge. And this particular weekend, it was so hot. It was like 90 degrees. What I can compare it to is a day at Disney in July, and all you want to do is sort of like drink your way around Epcot, but you can't because you're going to end up needing IV fluids. It was one of those kind of days. It was blazing hot, not much area for shade. They had periodic like cooling stations where they sprayed the water on you like at an amusement park. Um, and how I realized that I wasn't really a convention person. Now, it paid in the sense that I was able to access all the buildings and the tunnels, because otherwise, without this convention ticket, I would not have been able to tour those. They are not part of a normal tour if you just went to Pennhurst solely for a tour. So that I got my money's worth out of. As far as the convention, there were celebrities there. There were sort of like two tiers of celebrities. There were the free celebrities, which were, I believe, like more so paranormal investigators and like podcasters or reality show people. And then there were more famous people, so to speak. That's debatable. Um, but they did have the actress Ashley Greene from Twilight. Now, these people you had to pay for, and I don't know how much it was. And it said there was a big sign, cash only. So originally I was like, okay, I know who Ashley Greene is. I'll go see her. However, Twilight, when Twilight came out, I was probably like 25 years old. So I kind of was like a couple years too old to be like obsessed with Twilight. Um, maybe if I was a little bit younger at the time, it would have been like more in, a bigger part of my cinematic history. Fine movie, great movie, but I wasn't about to pay a certain price to see this woman, I no shade to her at all. Like she's probably a lovely woman. Um, but I just didn't think it was worth it. And then the people that were free to see, and this is probably going to discredit me to a certain point, but honestly, I didn't really know who they were. Like, I don't really watch ghost hunting shows. I probably should start. Um, you know, bad on me. I'm sorry about that. I am a huge horror movie fan. I honest to God, I have horror movies on 24/7. But as far as like, and I don't know if you categorize them as reality shows or what, but as far as those kind of shows, I don't really know who these people are. So, one, the lines were insane. And in this heat, I was like, I literally cannot stand in these lines in this heat. And then also, I felt kind of like an idiot if I were to go up and meet these people and be like, oh, hi, like, let's get a picture, but low key, I don't really know who you are. So I was a little embarrassed. And, my fault for not looking up who was going to be there and doing my proper research. But that's kind of, I don't want to be inauthentic. I don't want to pretend that I'm someone that I'm not. So I, at this point in time, I don't watch those kind of shows. So I just didn't really know. And these lines were insane. Um, then probably the best thing about the convention was the amount of vendors that they had. Now I'm fortunate enough, I live in Conshohocken. We have a great metaphysical store here where you can find anything, and anything witchy, anything weird, anything 13 circles, shout out. Um, but for people, I understand that, not everybody has access to that sort of thing. And there was a lot of, you know, local artists and beautiful paintings and artwork. And that does bring me to one thing I did buy. I was in the market for a new Ouija board because I originally had the, normal like Milton Bradley Ouija board, which kind of died due to a drunken party, things being spilled. It got very sticky. So I was in the market, and I got this beautiful handmade spirit board from a company called Resin and Bone. Check them out on Instagram. They're lovely. And I also got, which I don't have to show, a slate paint, not a painting, I guess it's like an etching of Michael Myers, which I gave to my neighbor because she is in love with Michael Myers. One thing I do regret not buying was the guy that owns the Buffalo Bill House was there. Apparently, the Buffalo Bill House is in Pennsylvania. And hello, Silence of the Lambs is like my number one favorite movie. And he had these like little Funko figurines, and the figurine was Buffalo Bill with his dog Precious. And I wanted it so bad, but I didn't want to carry it around. So I was like, oh, I'll come back for it. And then I never went back for it, and my fault. I mean, maybe I can order it online or something, hopefully, but it was super cute. But yeah, tons of vendors. I'll put a little video in here at the end to show the vendors. One thing I did not like was the food situation. Now, there were um, drink people. There was a drink station for the VIP ticket, which was like water and like beer. And, there's people there knocking them back like way before noon. Not my style. I don't drink due to health issues. Nothing against it. I wish I could. I miss those days. Uh, and, but the food lines, terrible. Did not move. And all I wanted was like a hot dog or five, you know? Like it's not much to ask. I was just starting to feel I was hot. I was like low blood sugar. I'm like I need to like get out of this environment. So I was in line for the food, not going anywhere. There's at least 30, 40 people in front of me. So I went back to my car, drove to the Wawa down the street and had Wawa. Came back, had to park sort of like in the woods. I'm not even kidding. And go on this like little trail to get back to the security check to go back into the convention. So that was the first day. The second day um wasn't much different. I am a sufferer of severe anxiety. So I will say the morning of the second day of the convention, I had a severe panic attack because I knew what to expect. I knew it was going to be a lot of people. It was going to be really hot. It was going to be a difficult day. And my feet hurt. My feet hurt from the first day. So I was just like panicking and I was like, you know what, should I not even go? Like that did cross my mind. And you know what? I ended up going. I medicated myself. Um but this time I went prepared. First day, I wore pants. Big mistake. I was so sweaty. Oh. Second day, I wore shorts. First day, I took my normal purse, which I like hold on my arm here. Big mistake. My back was hurting from the purse. The purse was heavy. So the second day, I actually brought a backpack. That was much more efficient and a better idea. Also, the second day is when I explored the tunnels. So that was really cool. And also on the second day is when I did the history tour. So it ended up being a productive day despite me almost not going. And that's really, you know, I don't want to like yuck anyone's yum and say, conventions are stupid because they're not. They're not. Like there were so many contributing factors like the heat and the size of the place and just being uncomfortable. Like, I'm 42 years old. I can't be schlepping around like I used to. Um, it, and if you enjoy these things and know who these people are, and that is your wheelhouse, by all means, I think it was a fantastic event. I'll bite the food. The food was bad. Um, but yeah, I would definitely recommend going. One thing that surprised me, I thought I'd see a lot more people dressed up. What I did see was probably the most amount of black clothing I have ever seen in my life in one place. Like black. Yeah, which doesn't do good in the heat. And I was picturing people in costumes or at least like looking like a witch or something. That didn't really happen, but whatever, to each their own. It's probably too hot for a costume, to be honest. Um, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Paracon. I probably would have been okay with just doing a normal tour at some normal or some random time at Pennhurst. I probably wouldn't go again to Paracon, um, unless, between now and next year, I find out who all these people are and find out they're super cool people and want to meet them. Then, yeah, I'll go again. Um, but yeah, with that, I am going to leave you in a couple minutes here just with some interesting facts about Pennhurst, and then that will be it. So I will be back shortly. Okay, so we are wrapping it up. I wanted to leave you guys with some fun facts about Pennhurst. Um, during the time at Pennhurst, there was a doctor there, literally named Dr. Fear. He was known for this process called downgrading, which put people with normal IQs into profoundly disabled wards to cause extreme anguish. And he was notorious for giving painful injections as punishments. Now, it is said that Dr. Fear is the inspiration for the doctor, Dr. Arthur Arden, played by James Cromwell, on season 2 of American Horror Story. So that's pretty cool. Secondly, a big thing that happened at Pennhurst in 1968 was a reporter called Bill Baldini did a 5-part documentary expose on Pennhurst, and it exposed the abuse and inadequacies that were happening at the institution. This led to the Pennsylvania legislature in 1969 giving $25 million to improve the stuff at Pennhurst. But that still ultimately led to its demise in the 1970s, which made it closed. I want to talk about one of the survivors of Pennhurst. His name was, or is, I'm not sure if he's still alive, Roland Johnson. He was a very powerful leader in the disabilities rights movement. Some people call him the Martin Luther King of the disability movement. He was the president of the Philadelphia chapter of Speaking for Ourselves and Empowers to advocate for disability rights. Um, Also, um, another thing I want to point out is that Pennhurst now employs a lot of disabled people. Now, the definition of being disabled is much different now than it was back then, but they do use it as sort of a way to reclaim the disability stigma or have you. Um, but they do employ a lot of disabled people to organize historical artifacts, lead paranormal investigations, and ensure that the grounds are respected. So it's a nice way for the people to reclaim their property. And that's pretty much it. Please let me know what you think. I would say that this video podcast episode is more so to be viewed. So check it out on YouTube. If you want to listen, it will also be on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Follow me on Instagram If you have a scary story that you would like to submit and I will read it on the podcast, please email me at paparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. It has been fun. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope it's okay. I promise it will get better. And that's it. Have a good rest of your day.